What's going on, people? Welcome. I have a special guest with us today, and it is my boy, Big Jon Steel. Man, thanks for joining me today. We have something awesome for you. We're going to be breaking down objections to Christianity. But we're not just breaking down objections to Christianity. We're going to give you a reliable, tried and true framework and methodology that you can use every single time outside of just watching your favorite apologists, such as myself, because I know I am one, John as well, and other people you like to watch, where you can use it and you can be confident on your own. We're going to go over conversational dynamics, conversational confidence. And whenever you're reading something, whenever you're engaging with something, you don't have to guess. What do I say next? How do I break this down? You know exactly what you are doing. John, thank you so much for joining me today. Say what's up to the people. Just give a little introduction to yourself. Who are you, man? Why are you here?
What's up, everyone? Just real quick, how do you say? I never can say it, and you always say it. What?
Methodological.
Methodological. What? Say it again. How do you say it?
Methodological.
Methodological. Meth.
Yeah, you gotta jump off like the th. It's like you gotta just say it quick.
It's okay. I'll never be able to say it.
On that. Yeah, methodology. Can you say methodology?
Method.
Oh boy, he's got the tism. Yeah,
I get
right. So wait, no, that's just like whatever. Anyway, all good. John.
Yeah, so I'm Big Jon Steel. I got an apologetic channel. Basically, all I do is I just hit live and I allow people to come and yell stupid things at me and I yell stupid things back at them. And my goal is to make them seem more stupid than I am. So that way Christianity seems more true than their stupid belief. Yeah, that's like tongue-in-cheek way of saying I just try to take the faith and make it seem rational. That's ultimately my goal at the end of the day. A lot of things I noticed when I first became a Christian, started streaming, was people were like constantly coming at me being like, hey, were you dropped on your head as a kid? Why do you believe in this nonsense, this fairy tale? You might as well believe in Santa Claus. So it just kind of became like a gripe for me. I'm like, no, there's really good reasons to say, hey, Christianity is true and you could be rational and believe in this. So that's kind of what I do, is like point that out.
Yeah, facts, absolutely. And I gotta make sure I add your thing in there. People will be able to go to you. Is it just Big Jon Steel on all platforms? I mean, mainly TikTok, yep. Right? You're mainly just on TikTok debating. Okay, yeah.
No. TikTok is not even my main platform. That's like my most minor thing right now. I'm mainly on YouTube, so like Big Jon Steel, and that's where we get a lot of our call-ins now, and we go live now. I still am doing TikTok, but that's probably like our minority position at this point.
Okay. Yeah. Well, good to know. Well, there you guys go. Thanks for clearing that up. Yeah, guys, so this is going to be different, right? Because we're going to give you some good education. We're going to go over objections that you've probably heard already, but we're not just going to go over objections. There is a way, okay? There is a reason why someone like myself, why someone like John can enter into the ring of the conversation across worldview lines and just actually defend Christianity and actually break down objections. We aren't just guessing, okay? We aren't just doing our best. It's not because we've read more than every other person. We've read, but there is something that we are doing that's in the background. And I want to show you exactly what that is, okay? So, John, this is where you come in. Dude, let the lion out of the cage. This is time for you to show up and show out. And so we're going to start like, what is Jon Steele's framework? Like what is your mind? Let's get inside your mind, brother. Okay.
Well, I want to talk about the reading real quick, because you said not reading as much. I actually haven't read a lot. Like in like the grand scheme of things, I've only been a Christian 4 years, maybe like 20 books. Right. That's like how many books have you read in your study?
Probably 400 combined books, articles, maybe.
Right. So like, I think there's more of like how you implement what you read rather than how much you read.
Yeah. And I love that you bring that up, right? Because that's exactly what it's about. And everybody really hear what he's saying here, right? It's not about how much you read, right? But it's pretty much how you're reading and then how you're implementing that. And so for those of you that are unfamiliar, who are not inside the Transcending Answers Academy, which you should be, right? That's something I teach a lot of the times is how do you engage in certainty of implementation based on the material that you are reading, okay? And one of the things that I always recommend, right? It's a hierarchy of what you are consuming. And do you know where I put like podcasts and YouTube and watching your favorite apologist debate people? I put that at the bottom, okay? Because that's entertainment. That's apologetics entertainment. You are an apologetics junkie. You are shooting up. You are metaphor like what do they call it? Like metaphorically shooting up, right? Apologetics content to feel good that your faith was defended, but you can't do it yourself.
Bro just brought me on to trash talk me. I'm just everyone's dealer here, just shooting them
Everyone's
up. That's all
plug,
I'm
yeah.
doing. Like just the plug over here.
But what you want to be able to do, right, is what's going to be at the top. What's going to be at the hierarchy. Here is some free game for y'all, right? At the top of the hierarchy is going to be academic work, specifically an article. Why? You should see what a referee evaluated article looks like before it gets to publication. You would cry. Okay. Pretty much go back and redo it. Okay. So when something goes through publication, it's because it was looked at, it was heavily evaluated. You're only getting what you need to know. Same thing with an academic book. Then under that, right, it's going to be some kind of, self-publication, maybe from someone you trust, right? And then below that, it's just going to be just watching videos, right? So if you can find something academic, consume that and reread it. Don't just read something once, okay? Like right here, let's see if I got it on me. Do I have it on me? Where is it? I don't know if I got it on me, dude. But I was going to pull up, no, I have to. It's right here. Yeah. Trent Doherty's book on the problem of animal pain. I've read this 17 times, okay? That's all I needed to do. It's a 180-page book.
Just a little plug. That book is also linked in my Discord server. So if anyone wants access to it, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, it's super expensive. Otherwise, I have no idea why Trent has no control over that. That's just how academics gouge people. But academia gouges people. But yeah, so that's super huge here. So what you're going to see is that in action. So let's just kick into it, man. All right. Wait, let's show this one real fast. When y'all gonna do a how to act like an idiot when defending Christianity?
Oh, I do that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on my channel. Guaranteed. Like you might as well come over and watch it because I do that every single week and I have mastered that art. I've mastered it, my friend. So yeah, we've already got that covered.
Can people, how do people win a taco?
Actually win the debate.
Yeah, there you go. I want to see that. All right.
And not with semantics, because there's some people who try to come up and try to instead of arguing the rhetoric, they try to argue the semantic of technically that word means this, so therefore technically it's correct, but they don't actually focus on the rhetoric. Don't do that. That just shows you're a douchebag at the end of the day if you do that kind of stuff.
Facts. All right. So John, let's start with number one, right? What is your methodology when breaking down arguments? Let's say I'm coming up here and I'm like, yo, Christianity is false, bro. Okay, it's big false, elite ball knowledge. Let's say I'm popping up on you like that. What is going through your mind when someone is throwing objections at you? What's your approach?
First is figuring out their epistemology. Why do they believe what they believe, right? And this is something that you and I have talked about in the past is priors. Like, why are you saying I don't believe this? What is your criteria? And I'm trying to find your where you have contradictions in your worldview, and I'm trying to see if you're consistent. And there's actually very few people that I can actually have a conversation with, or I've had conversations with, where I'll notice that I attack their epistemology and I see consistency across the board. And then I could say, yeah, you actually have a valid reason to say Christianity is false. Most people have these prior presuppositions that are just embedded in their mind, and they actually have never challenged it or tested it. And when they're actually challenged or tested with it, they crumble. So it's a big one that people will come up, and I love saying this. They'll say something along the lines of, oh, you believe it? It was just written in a book. And I just throw this back at them like, well, how do you learn things? Because I learn them from books. Do you not read books to learn things? And then we can get into the whole conversation of how you figure out if a book is actually trustworthy and if you can actually get good information from there. But just it's this thing that they got, it was a book written by a man, therefore you shouldn't trust it. Literally every single book in history is a book written by man, yet you trust it. And that's where you learn information. It's like something you'd say to throw shots at somebody is that maybe you should pick up a book and read it sometime. If you want to throw a shot and call someone stupid, that's what you would say. But for some reason with Christianity, it's an insult to say that they learned something from a book. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I love that you bring that up. So one of the things that we teach at Worldview Mastery, I call it the FFP model. It's called Frameworks First Principles. This is something I haven't been too forthcoming with yet because it's been something I've been working on. But I put together a model that really encapsulates the best practices for defending your faith, for having discussions across worldview lines. Frameworks first, meaning what did Jon just say? Okay. He just said it's your epistemology. There is a framework by which you are implicitly or explicitly operating from that informs you of how you actually go about belief formation. All of us have beliefs, right? And what we mean by belief here is just something you think is true. You take a proposition, right, which is just simply a statement that can be true or false. Snow is white, sky is blue, whatever you want to say, right? I have no hair, okay? Whatever you want to choose, right? It could be true or false statement. Statement is true. Forming a belief around that is just something you think is true, right? But however, not everybody goes about the same way of doing that. And being able to call out the underlying framework beneath what is explicitly stated is important because it's like roots to branches. If you focus on the branches, that's cool, right? But if you get to the root, it takes care of the branches with it. So if you get to the cause, you automatically take care of the effect. That's why I teach. If you take care of the framework undergirding their objections, their objection falls, right? And then in many circumstances, you can actually show like, hey, listen, it might actually be in your best interest to adopt a different framework because this actually isn't serving you because it's leading you to inconsistencies. Don't we all want to be internally consistent? Isn't that a virtue of rational thought? If we all have the goal of having rational thoughts, then we should all have the goal of being consistent, right? It's connected. So I love the fact that you're saying that. So you look at their epistemology, right? Which is, well, how are they forming beliefs, right? How do they weigh evidence? Beliefs, evidence, this is something that's discussed in epistemology all the time, every damn day, okay? So you also mentioned something really interesting. You say you see if they're also applying that framework in the same way in other places. So have you run into situations where they have one set of standards and then they switch their set of standards when, let's say, they're attacking Christianity?
Bro, like all the time. Like all the time. There's a syllogism I was working with Than, right? That kind of points this out. And then just to run through quick, I won't run through the whole thing. Premise one, the historical evidence for Jesus' crucifixion is sufficient to warrant a rational belief in that event. Premise two, the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection, transformed disciples, empty tomb, etc., is at least as strong as the evidence for the crucifixion. If the two events are supported by comparison levels with credible evidence, then one should believe both or neither, absent independent defeaters. Conclusion, therefore, one who believes in the crucifixion on historical grounds should also believe in the resurrection unless one has a specific defeater for the resurrection. Now, that's a complex way of saying, I'll often ask people, well, do you believe Jesus is a real person? Yes. Do you believe that he actually walked around preaching? Yes. Do you believe that he was crucified under Pontius Pilate? Yes. Okay. Well, if historical claims are not evidence, why do you believe those things? Because I'm just inclined to believe that these things could happen, but that's fine. That's fine. You can believe those things can happen. But why would you be convinced of something absent evidence? This is the biggest inconsistency I find with people is their standard of what they consider evidence. They say evidence is just the empirical method, something that's testable, repeatable, something that you can put in a petri dish, see it and do it over and over again. Yet they don't apply it. They agree that Hannibal crossed the Alps. Can't test and repeat that. So they say at one side of their mouth that historical accounts are not evidence, but out the other side of their mouth, they say, I believe all these historical accounts happened. Which one is it? That's the biggest inconsistency I noticed with most people that I'm having conversations with.
Yeah, and that's really, really good, and I like that you bring that up. Especially, I think evidence, right, is probably the most misunderstood concept in these discussions. Outside of people actually specialize in the field of epistemology, you are scarcely going to find someone that actually knows how to properly marshal evidence in favor of anything they believe. And guys,
Most
everyone
people
listening,
don't even know what the word evidence. Like, ask them to define what the word evidence is,
right?
and they can't give
Yeah,
you a definition. Yeah.
yeah. And again, guys, this goes back to frameworks. Remember FFP, framework first principles. Okay. Someone says to you, right? And you aren't being obtuse by saying this. Literally, get clarification. Someone says to you, there's no evidence, right? Or something like that. All right, evidence that's attached. There are different accounts, like literally in the literature, there are different accounts and theories of what the word evidence even has to even relate to or is associated with or means, right? So for example, what I'll say, this is a little nerdy, right? But I take a view that's called the positive relevance view, positive relevance, right? And so you ask somebody, okay, yeah, you said the word evidence. I recognize that word, but how are you using that word? What is your specific count of evidence? So that's even a question you can ask. What is your specific account of evidence? And if they give you, well, I just think it's this, this, and that. Okay, that's a description. I'm telling you to give me a model. What is your account of evidence, right? And it should give you the structure and the function, not just what they think evidence does. Okay, that's confusing necessary, what we call necessary and sufficient conditions. Rather, what is the model of evidence? What is this very structure? Not just how it functions, what's its structure? Okay. And if they can't do that, then what they're doing is they're engaging in making things up. I call it just making things up epistemology. Okay. What did David Hume, classic David Hume, say? What's David Hume's maxim that we can all agree with? The wise man apportions his confidence to the evidence. We can all agree with that. Now, what that word means, we need to get specific. So, John, what is something that they can do as just a tried and true, like reliable thing that they can do? If someone gives them an objection, right? What's the first thing that they should be thinking? Let's say they give them that objection, which is like Christianity lacks evidence or something like that. What should they be thinking in that moment?
Well, you got to be thinking about what each and every word they are saying means. Not like Jordan Peterson, not like, what do you mean by Christianity? Not like that, but like you say the word evidence. Okay, it lacks evidence. What is evidence? How are you defining evidence? And like we just did like a whole tangent on that. But if they say, yeah, your worldview lacks evidence. Okay, sure, maybe, depending on how you're defining evidence. If you're defining evidence by the empirical method of like testable and repeatable, and I know that's not the exhaustive definition of empirical evidence, but that's how most people use it on the street, right? They think it's testable and repeatable. Then yeah, you're correct. There is no evidence for that. But then you can challenge them. You could say, okay, well, what is the evidence that you had breakfast 2 weeks ago? Now, they might not need to prove that, say there is no need to prove that, but yet you could still say, hey, if you gave me a testimony that you had bacon and eggs 2 weeks ago on Monday, I'm going to be inclined to believe you. So it's a type of evidence, because the traditional definition of evidence is anything that raises the probability of something being true. So if you said to me you had pancakes 2 weeks ago on a Monday, I'm less likely to believe that you had bacon and eggs because you've given me a testimony. And a lot of people think like testimony is just not evidence. It's the worst kind of evidence that you possibly can. I disagree. And I think I might be pushing against the grain here. I actually think it's the strongest type of evidence. And the reason I think it's the strongest type of evidence is because evidence alone without testimony is nothing, is absolutely nothing, right? Let's say, like I used this example before in a conversation, is like, I have Jesus's blood clot in a room by itself, but no one talks about it. No one witnesses it. No one says anything about it. What does that blood clot mean? Nothing. It has no value whatsoever. But through the examination of that blood clot, through expertise, through knowing, how all these things work based off other science that was done before, through the testimony of the person who's the expert, then it has its value. If a police officer on the street wants to learn about me being robbed in my house right now, someone breaks in right now, starts robbing me, some black guy.
Black people, man, I wouldn't understand.
Anyways, he comes in, starts robbing me. And the police officer out on the street is going to have no reason to think that I'm being robbed. He's the probability in his mind that I'm being robbed right now is 0.1, right? Really low. But then my wife starts yelling out the window, help, help, my husband's being robbed. The probability in that police officer's mind has gone from like a 0.1, probably to like a 0.5. Now, you can't say absolutely I'm being robbed. He has to investigate. But the probability of that happening is now raised for him. Now, people get confused when they say probability. They're thinking I'm talking about absolutes. And I don't know how they come to that conclusion because I'm using the word probable. I don't know, like, well, it doesn't mean it's, yeah, I know. It doesn't mean it's happening. I'm saying it's raised the likelihood for that individual. And it's very key that I'm saying here is that individual, because evidence on what's going to convince you is subjective. There is no objective standard of evidence that's going to convince people across the board. It's all subjective. It all starts on your priors. That police officer, he had really low priors before. He got new information. It now raised. He's going to come and investigate it. And this all starts with testimony. Testimony is really strong evidence. It's nothing that's going to give you anything conclusive. You can't just say it and it's true. I can't say there's a unicorn in my closet and therefore it's true. But simply making that claim raises the probability. It might be very, very, very low to start. It might be like 0.000000001. And me saying it raises it to a 0.0000001.1, right? But it does go up. It's kind of a bit of a tangent. I don't know. You want to add to that?
No, I like that. Yeah. And well, this is really, really important, right? Because the one thing I'm going to say is evidence is evidence is evidence is evidence. And just because we can categorize evidence doesn't mean that the underlying frameworks by which we use to evaluate evidence changes. It doesn't. Its context changes. Just in the same sense that your morality, the way in which you can think about right and wrong, doesn't fundamentally change, but the circumstances by which you think about right and wrong change, right? You can think about it the same way, which is the very frameworks we use to evaluate evidence. In certain circumstances, we're working with testimony. Here, I was going to say this as well. There's another set of circumstances by which we use evidence, and that's going to be when we just have private access to our own thoughts and things like that. We can also call this perceptual evidence, right? I think there's three categories of evidence. I think that there's perceptual, then there's memorial, and then there's going to be testimonial, right? And yeah, I can be, if I took LSD right now and I hallucinated a pink elephant, it would be only for me. But I would have as much evidence as I need to conclude that I am seeing a pink elephant in my private mental experience. So we all start from perceptual evidence, right? And then we go from those observations. And then what do? We make judgments by conjoining them to hypotheses. Okay. This is going to be the same way across the board, whether you work with testimony, whether you work with memory, or whether you work with perception. I like the fact that you bring that up. So, right. And I'm going to go back a little bit. You mentioned honing in on the things that people say, right? The words. Guys, you need to be a Venus flytrap for discussions when it comes to the words that people give you, right? A confused conversation does nothing, okay? And your goal isn't to flatline, steamroll the other person. It's to go somewhere, okay? So one of the things that I teach is you should be looking first and foremost for any ambiguous term or phrase, okay? When I ask somebody, right, and John, you know what's happening when you do this. When you ask somebody, well, what do you mean by evidence? It's not because you don't actually know. It's not that you are engaging in fact-finding right now. You are saying, I recognize that term. However, I'm unsure if you're using that term in the way that I'm using that term. That's what you're saying.
Establishing terms, right? Like, and this happens in debates all the time. Words don't really have any meaning. It's what we assign them to them. So if somebody uses evidence in a way that's different from the way I use evidence, I'm not going to look at them and say, that's not what evidence is. This is what evidence is. I'm going to see if they apply that standard across the board, the standard that they're currently holding to, and see if they have consistency. And if I don't see consistency, then I can say, well, this is my standard and this is why I think it's consistent.
Facts. Yeah. And the next part there, man, is how do you maintain, this is really good. How do you maintain authority in conversations? Okay. Right. You're in your lives. You're talking to these people. People are coming up. A lot of Christians, and I'm really passionate about this because I see this happen a lot. A lot of Christians, because they think they need to be nice, turn the other cheek, all this stuff like that, that it gives the other person they're talking to complete and utter right to steamroll them and to talk over them and to never let them get a word in because you have to do that. How do you maintain authority in conversations so you're not always having your back against the wall, but rather it actually becomes a true give and take?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because it's something that's been on my mind recently. I actually talked to a friend about it because I get a lot of Christians come at me and be like, you are not nice enough to people. And they're right. I'm not super kind. I'm not super nice when I'm talking to people on lives. And I don't really have the intent to be. I used to back in the day, but then that's what happened. People who watched me when I first started doing TikTok like 4 years ago, I had a lot of people say to me, and this was beautiful to say, they'd say, you know, you really act like Jesus. And I had this, and that was such a beautiful thing for me to hear. Like, you really act like Jesus. You're really kind. You're really nice. And more Christians were like, yeah, I might consider staying. And that's really cool to hear. But at the end of the day, that would be a wrong reason to be a Christian. It'd be a really wrong reason to be a Christian because you like the people who are Christian. That's a terrible reason to hold a truth value.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing. And then the next thing is none of them actually really became Christian. So they made these beautiful claims that made me feel nice, but they never really converted or thought about or challenged their own worldviews.
Right.
And the reason for that is because they did exactly what you said, is they would just steamroll all the reasons they didn't believe. I'd listen intently. I'd give an answer. I'd give them like a really comforting, loving thing. Like, oh, hey, that's not the way Christians should be. And, you know, we should be better. And again, it left everybody feeling nice, but I don't think actually anybody changing minds or coming to truth. And so I didn't intend to become a little bit more vulgar and more combative with people. It just kind of happened naturally because people would come up and do it to me. So there's a few times I was live and people would humiliate me, like literally humiliate me to the point where I remember one time somebody came up and did it and I wasn't prepared for it. And I was ready to, I was sitting there with my account open and I was going to delete it. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And my wife was sitting there just like, think about this and just take a night, sleep it off and think about it. And so these people constantly destroying me and humiliating me. Eventually I started swinging back and being like, you know what? You say I'm not consistent for this. Well, what about you in these certain things? And I think there's two reasons I do that. I think one reason is I got OCD, and you know this. And part of having OCD is I can analyze what people are saying quickly and I can figure out the conclusion they're getting to before they get there. And it's really annoying. It's not a good quality to have in friend conversations, but it can be good in debate. So I can often figure out where somebody's going before they get there. And I could pull them back to where like I think they should be. And I think the second thing is I was a bouncer for 10 years. So I really already been trained to not deal with people's BS. And I know when they're trying to like put one over on me. But I think the biggest thing that you got to do is you got to learn fallacies. I think this is a big one. So you figure out what fallacies, the nature of fallacies and how they work. And then you can sense when people are going to go into a fallacy. You can sense when there's like, I'll answer your question, but I'm going to do it in a way that's not answering your question. And then they start to shift and you got to pull them back. Be like, you're not answering my question. You're wasting time. Let's come back. So people often tell me, you don't let people talk. Yeah, I don't because you're not answering my question. But if you pay attention, when people are genuinely arguing in good faith and answering the question and bringing up real objections, I will sit there and I'll listen intently to every word they say. But you got to stay on point. You got to stay to the contention that you usually brought up. Most people bring up the contention. I'm addressing their contention, then they're trying to shift to another contention instead of focusing on that specific one. I don't know if that answered the question.
No, this is great. That was actually more than I was expecting, but this is awesome. And there's a lot that we can go off of. That last part, guys, sincerely, tattoo this on your brain. Fallacies. Knowing the most commonly used fallacies and then supplementing that with other not so much used fallacies. Oh my gosh, that's going to change your life. Because here's the thing, guys. Most people have never taken a class on logic. They've never taken an epistemology class. So they don't know how to make inferences well. Okay, guys? And an inference is just your process of reasoning from a set of premises to a conclusion, right? When you understand how inferences are made, right? And how invalid inferences, so valid inferences versus invalid inferences, when you know how to catch a mistaken reason, John, I don't know if you're like me, but I actually visually see it. Like when someone's talking,
well, like the P and not P and the Q and equals.
I'll just see the steps and I'll see when they don't connect. And I'm like, wait. That was special pleading. I'm like, wait. That was a non sequitur. That was question begging. So guys, I think that one of the biggest ones that forms of circular reasoning, right? And one form of circular reasoning is begging the question. And I better not ever hear y'all say, well, that begs the question. And that's not a thing. It raises the question. Begging the question is a fallacy. Okay. It raises the question. I'm sorry, dude. I see so many people say, well, that begs the question. Like they're trying to sound all intelligent. Like that's a fallacy. That's not a thing. No, that raises the question. Begging the question is when you assume your conclusion without justification. And if you're going to put it in a formal argument, your conclusion's in the premises, right? So that's why it's a form of circular reasoning. And a lot of times people will actually beg the question when they're actually putting forth like an argument from evil against Christianity, because they'll assume what God will do if because he is loving, but they don't
Yeah.
justify why that's what God's lovingness actually requires. That's a big version of begging the question. I actually think many.
Yeah, can I touch on that? So like they'll say something along the lines of like, if God is loving, he wouldn't allow you to suffer because of why, right? And then they'll use the analogy like, well, are you a father? If you had children, would you let them do this?
Yes,
And that's
right.
begging the question, because you're presupposing what
Mhm.
love looks like and the nature of what God's love is in scripture. So it's not an internal critique. It's actually an external critique that's disguised as an internal critique.
Absolutely. And that's really, really good. Yeah. And so guys, like legitimately be able to catch all forms of circular reasoning. Know when a set of premises actually doesn't at all lead to a conclusion. Really, really helps. But like obviously the straw man fallacy is really, really important. But I think that things like equivocation, right, are really important. Categorical errors, right, are really important. And I think special pleading is also really, really important. Being able to catch things like that, you'll be able to see it in conversation. But here's what you do is if you catch a fallacy, don't just call out the fallacy, right? Because that's not enough. You want to call out the fallacy, and I see you smiling there. What's going through your mind?
I just like that's what I do. Some people
no,
like,
I mean,
they'll do a fallacy. I'm like, that's special pleading. Like,
well, I know, but I don't think this actually applies to you, because what you're doing when you're calling out the fallacy is you're giving that person a chance to see that their original argument actually wasn't a valid form of reasoning, and you're giving them a chance to like try again, form an argument that is valid. So when you're calling out someone for saying that and they act like you have a problem, the goal is for them to see that there is no problem, because the very basis of their argument is an error in reasoning. You give them another chance to be able to make one.
mm-hmm.
So I like that you say that. I think it's really good that you talk about the overvaluing of niceness in conversations. Honestly, my hypothesis and kind of like my theory around this is I think that's just really a cultural thing, man. Because
Well,
yeah.
so I think in conversation, I think niceness is, I think like it's a virtue, right? Being kind is a virtue. But I think there's a difference in debate. Debate is combat. Like you're in combat at that point, and that's not a reason to like. A lot of times I'll insult people. I probably shouldn't do that, and I should work on that, or I'll cuss them out or something. That's me being human. But combat, like you can be kind and combative at the same time. Go ahead, I cut you off.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, and I think that's primarily cultural. I think that worrying about the cosmetics of conversation in that way is something that's cultural. But I don't mean, and we got to distinguish this between just being absolutely abrasive and overly disagreeable, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I actually found this out. Apparently, I've had many conversations where I thought that I was doing a good thing by like I'd be hanging out with friends and I would be like, "Hey, I don't think that leads to this." Apparently, you come off a jerk sometimes for doing that, and I thought I was doing a good thing because I'm like, I don't think they know that what they just said contradicts this thing that they
People
just
don't
said
like
over
being
here.
told they're wrong. People hate that.
It's so interesting because like we exist in this space, right? And it's like, oh, thank you for telling me I'm wrong. You know,
Yeah,
like
that's not how it goes. That's not how it
yeah,
goes. People want to be right. They don't want to think that they're wrong or get caught being wrong. And it's almost embarrassing, like especially in today's culture, because like I admitted I was wrong on a live once, well, more than once, but there was a time I did it and people clipped me and then made videos about it. Even Jon Steel admits he's wrong. It's like, that's the culture we're in, right? It's like,
it's
you
so
can't give
stupid.
it, you can't give an inch because it'll take a mile. But
It is
that's not the way it should be. Like people should have the liberty to say, yeah, I was wrong in this certain area. I don't know. And I'm willing to grow. But the culture doesn't allow for that. And I think that's why people take such offense to it, because like if right now I say something stupid and somebody who doesn't like me is watching, they're going to try to clip in and take it out of context. Or if I go on live and somebody comes up and debates me and they make a really good point, I say, you know what, you got a good point. I don't know how to answer this. And then all of a sudden I got a video out there. It's like Jon Steel got cooked. This is how Jon Steel got cooked. And that's the nature of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, and listen, it's all good. Like there are ways. I think that the addiction to always being right in conversation adds so much unnecessary pressure. And guys, really hone in on this because you can literally signal that, hey, this might be at the edge of my thinking without you having to basically be, oh, by the way, that means my entire worldview has crumbled. That's not what that
Mhm.
means. It just means that it's the like, feel free to use that language. Yeah, I'm not sure. That is at the edge of my thinking. Boom.
If I could use
Move
an
on.
example, somebody brought up a specific, tried to bring up a specific complaint to the monarchical view of Trinitarianism. And I'm not even too sure if I hold to that viewpoint, but for some reason he thought I did, and he brought up this specific complaint. And I eventually just looked at him like, you know what? I'll just say you're right. You disproved monarchical Trinitarianism. I can just adopt social, or I can adopt Joshua Sijuwadi's view of the Trinity. Like there's a whole bunch of different models out there, and just because you've disproven this one specific model, or even shown that I'm not knowledgeable enough in this one specific model, doesn't throw out my whole worldview. I don't stop being a Christian because maybe I was wrong about monarchical Trinitarianism, but I could still be right that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, that the Trinity is still true. Just that specific model, maybe I was wrong on.
Yeah, and that's a really helpful framework. One of the ways that I try to get people to understand this is think about it in terms of genus and species, right? You can have the genus be Christianity, and then a species of Christianity be Christianity plus, and then some very specific version of a doctrine. Now, but that's not the only species of Christianity. There's Christianity plus, and then another version of that specific doctrine. Now, here's the beautiful part. A species can be false. That doesn't necessarily mean the genus is false because there's
Mm.
other ways in which it can be true. And so, guys, you think in terms of Christianity in that way, which is okay. Yeah, well, if one way in which Christianity can manifest itself is false, that doesn't mean Christianity generally is false, right?
Just look at the deconstructionists, man. How
Yep.
many deconstructionists are out there being like, I was a Christian for 30 years. I had a debate with a guy once where he's like, I was a Christian for 30 years. You're not going to tell me anything about Christianity. I learned it all before I deconstructed and left. And I'm just like, what's a church father? He's like, huh? Like he didn't even know what a church father was. And so like he of course didn't explore all models of Christianity. He just had this one specific model, determined that was false, and all Christians believe the same thing.
Yep. Yeah. You ask them what is the conciliar tradition, right, et cetera, and so forth. What was discussed in? Tell me what was discussed in any one of the ecumenical councils. Like, just give me
Mhm.
the content. Like, yeah, they should
Just
be able to
give
tell
me
you
the
that,
definition of an ecumenical council.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's really, really important. So, guys, these are some tools and frameworks you can use just in some conversational dynamics because people think that, oh, especially online right now, like Christians, they're easy to topple over, they're easy to steamroll. You want to avoid steamrolling so that you can actually have a conversation, not so that you can do it yourself, so you can actually have a conversation. And like I said, being a Venus flytrap for every word, right? For every proposition that's made, for every term that can be defined, that's really important. And some people think that you might be being obtuse by doing that. But at the end of the day, that kind of shows more so what their agenda was than yours because they want to kind of get a quote unquote an easy win off of you. But you're probably not going to be in the lion's den as much as like someone like Jon is going to be. But it prepares you in those circumstances, right? Be wise as serpents and be innocent as doves. We can really apply that principle here.
And
The
if I can add to just that,
Yeah,
just a little thing. Hang on to literally every word that people say. Don't half listen or get the gist. Listen to every word, how they're placing it. Really focus on what somebody's saying, because what they're telling you is very important, even if it doesn't seem to be. Even if they're like even if they actually are an idiot, hang on to every specific word because they're telling you what they believe in just minor things that you think you'd miss.
absolutely, absolutely. And Jon, tell us how can we go about expressing our faith clearly and calmly, right? A lot of people allow themselves to get emotional, or someone will say something, it'll prick or trigger them in a conversation. And we know that when you are triggered in a conversation, it removes the resources you'd otherwise have, the mental resources to stay sharp, to stay focused, and to be actually be able to hone in on and actually track in a conversation. So how do we remain calm while also being clearly expressive?
Do jujitsu.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
All right, moving on. No. Yeah.
like, if I can add on
What
to
do you
that,
mean?
but
So
yeah.
I don't do it, right?
Yes. So not
What does that mean?
necessarily jujitsu, but like in jujitsu, we have like a philosophy of pressure testing. So jiu-jitsu is pretty well known, but for those that don't know, it's a combat sport that really focuses on grappling, strangulations, arm breaks, things like that. That's your goal. We're a big fan of stress testing. We don't go in and practice breaking boards and um, trying some kung fu moves and then going off on our day thinking that we can do it. We do what's called rolling, which means at the end of almost every single class, we literally take another human being and both of us try to kill each other. Sometimes at 100%. Sometimes we go lighter because you got to save your bodies. But like you're really trying to go at it and really trying to get each other's neck and arms. And the first time that you'll ever do like a jiu-jitsu class, you're gonna panic, you're gonna freak out, you're gonna flail. We joke that the most dangerous person in the gym is a white belt because they're the ones that are going to elbow you in the eye and break your nose just from doing some crazy things. But once you get like used to it and you're under pressure testing a lot, you're going to stay more calm. You're going to be relaxed. So like when I go to roll now with people, I'm chill. Like I'm just relaxing. I think the same is going to be said about like defending your faith. The more you pressure test it, the better you're going to be at it. The more you implement it and try it, the more you realize what people are saying. The more you listen to people ridicule and critique you and talk down to you, the more you're not going to be as triggered by it. So it's like anything in life. If you want to get better at it, you just got to expose yourself. But you're gonna have times where you do it wrong. Like I can think of times where I yelled at people in my life, like red faced yelling because I got caught and I was embarrassed and I didn't know what to say. Um, Now, do I get angry in my lives now? Still, sure, but I never lose my cool and go off the top because I've been there, I've done that. I know I'm going to be okay tomorrow. I know when I shut down this camera, my wife's still going to love me. I know no matter what happens, Christ has still got me. And I think that's the biggest thing. If I want to talk about like my faith, one of the biggest things that keeps me going is my assurance in Christ. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Is that he is king, he is God, and that trust in him will give you everything you've ever desired. Like I don't care if the whole world was against me. I'd be like, yo, Christ has still got me. And I think that's the biggest thing that keeps you going.
Dude, amen. Thank you for including that. Yeah, because guys, this isn't just an analytic thing, but this is not just an intellectual exercise. Like there is an existential aspect, and keep that in mind. Apollos, I want to pull this up. This is really good. The hardest for me is trying to see the meta discussion in real time. Yes, I can definitely see how I could have secured a more convincing presentation in hindsight, but strategy, what does I say? Strategy over tactics in the long run. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, seeing the meta discussion in real time, that's why you study. Okay. A big part of this is knowing all the different ways in which the conversation can travel. All right. I've come to understand that in a problem of evil conversation, there's really only two objections at the end of the day. And all the analytic types who, really understand the problem of evil, okay, they're gonna hate me for saying this because I'm oversimplifying. Whatever. But it really comes down to two objections at the end of the day. Suffering is either purposeless or there is too much for any finite person to handle. So it's either there's too much suffering or there's purposeless suffering or both. At the end of every discussion, that's really what it comes down to. And if you can do away with those, right, then you've neutralized the problem. So then you can see in your mind in real time, almost like you're playing 4D chess. Okay, are they going in the direction of too much suffering, or are they going in the direction of there is no purpose behind suffering? And that the guy can help you guide the conversation. I think that's really, really important. But also, it's why we train. Okay, one of the things that I will say, and John, I remember when you and I and Than literally came to this conclusion when we were preparing for our Jubilee conversation 2 weeks out in advance, and we had those nightly Discord conversations. We literally said this was something that we should be doing all the time because we would role play. Literally, we would role play with each other objections, and because when you know what I'm talking about. Hey, no, I'm true. When you know how much you know, I know how much I know. Than knows how much he knows. So we're just like going at it, bro, in these conversations. And it was iron sharpening iron. Plug in the Transcending Answers Academy. I do this twice a week with people that join. We do twice a week objection handling, going from weak objections to strong objections. If you want to learn how to be pressure tested, how to be conditioned for those things, you need to be training in real time against the best objections. Pop inside the Transcending Answers Academy and get started in doing that. Legitimately, it changes your life, no matter what skill level you're at. Okay, we had a question here. What's up?
I was just gonna say, you can't just read it and do it. You have to do it, and then the knowledge that you have actually implement. So yeah, I was just adding to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, facts. Question: does most of your development come from real engagements or something else like practice? I think this might be for you.
Mine's from real engagement, but I've been going live. When I first started, I went live like 5 days a week for 6 hours a day, and I did that for years. And even now, I still go live 3 days a week for about 3 to 4 hours a day. And so I've talked to probably, I don't know, thousands of people. I don't know how many people have you talked to, but we used to like have timers because there's so many people back in the day. So mine comes just from doing it with people. That sounded pause. But I agree with what Tim was saying earlier about the role play, because that really pushed me too. People I interact with on TikTok and YouTube generally are guys who are like, they got their normal 9 to 5. They don't really read books on epistemology and philosophy. They've never read the Bible, yet they know it's wrong. And so most of their arguments I'm going to know. So putting yourself in a situation with somebody who actually knows something about like philosophy or knows something about scripture, and then testing yourself with them, like people you could trust, where you're not worried about being embarrassed on like a public platform, I think is really important too. So like I was saying, just with jiu-jitsu, it's going to be just from doing it. You just got to get out there and strangle some people and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say another thing, like everybody's different. Like the way in which your psyche works in engaging in a conversation to express yourself clearly is not going to be the same way that I work or John works. And that's why you got to have it be field tested. I've done this for a decade of having these conversations with people from all skill levels, right? Also, there's something really, really good about talking to someone who knows much more than you, who's more seasoned than you. They can call out those things much better. And John, I think you've mentioned very transparently that you've had situations where you're like, hey, I lost the conversation. Hey, I was embarrassed by the conversation. How much have you learned from it? How much learning did that give you?
Oh, dude, so much. Because here's the thing: is like the moment I lose, I'm pissed off, and I'm going to study that until I'm blue in the face. And like, I can think of times where it's like people made it started. So before I started really doing like debates, I was making content back and forth with people. And I remember I made a video about somebody, and I missed a very important key thing. And this is a small lesson, but one of the most important lessons I learned. And because I missed that small key thing, that other person made a response video on me, and that's what they focused on. And they destroyed me because I missed that one small minor thing. And then all of a sudden I was bombarded from their warriors talking about, how much of an idiot I was and how much I got cooked. And I was like, I'm like, dude, this sucks. Like, I don't like this feeling. And so I went back and I read it. I'm like, all I missed was it was like a word or a sentence. I don't even remember what it was. So I think the biggest thing I learned from that is don't skip details. Don't skip the small details. That's the biggest thing I learned. Like if I'm going to go debate somebody on a piece of scripture and like it's going to be in a video, I triple check everything. I read 100 comments. People saw me do this the other day on a live. I was doing a response to like Andrew Wilson. He was doing a debate with a Mormon, and he made a point in a scripture where it says there'll be no more prophets after John. And I was like, whoa. And so I went and read that scripture. And then on the surface level of that scripture, I'm like, yeah, that does say that. So it says no more prophets after John. But then I read every single book I had, every single commentary I have in the room. People watch me do it, pull books out of left, right, and center. And that's not what that means. Because all Jesus was talking about was the fulfilling the law and the prophets that already came.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew used that out of context, against the Jehovah's Witness. And if the Jehovah's Witness not Jehovah's Witness, Latter-day Saint, if the Latter-day Saint knew that, if he knew that small detail about like the scholarly consensus plus the church father detail or the church father consensus, it would have been done. But because the surface level right on the bat, that small detail, it put him a step forward in that argument. So my whole thing isn't focus on the small details. My whole thing is that every debate you will learn something, every loss you'll learn something. We say this in jiu-jitsu, you don't lose, you learn. So every time you tap out, you learn what you did wrong. Every time you get strangled, you learn what you did wrong. Every time I lose a debate, I learn what I did wrong. And that one specific one, I learned focus on the small things. Don't miss the little details because you'll get caught on them.
I love that. Thank you for that. Well, let's move into some actual real world objections and let's apply some of these frameworks and methodologies to them. Let's start with the first category of things, God's existence, right? This is all one. It's a precondition for Christianity. Obviously, God must exist. So you're going to get these. Okay. So let's start with this one, man. There's no good arguments for God. All right. There's no new arguments. There's no good ones. Okay. They're all the same. They're all bad. They're all full of fallacies. There's no good arguments for God. So how would you take that apart?
Well, it's going to depend on who's asking me. So I'm going to ask them questions like, okay, why don't you think there's any good arguments? What are you looking for in an argument? What is your standard? Because there's lots of good arguments. So I might do like an appeal. I do appeal to authority all the time. I know it's fallacious and I'm okay with people calling me out. I don't know it's true.
Valid versions of that. I'm actually going to say that.
Yeah. So there's like, I'm forgetting his name all of a sudden. There's a famous atheist philosopher. Actually, you brought him up in one of your videos recently. That he specifically says it's rational for Christians to believe what they believe.
Graham Oppy.
And he's a notorious atheist philosopher, right? So Graham Oppy says that, and I could just simply go right after that. I'm like, well, Graham Oppy, famous atheist philosopher, says it's rational for Christians to believe in it. So why are you saying there's no evidence? So I got to figure out what the person's saying. As for like specific arguments, this is actually something I'm wrestling with because like I will go to like a contingency argument, but I don't. The thing is, I can give really good arguments for Christianity, and for a Christian, they might be listening in the background. Yeah, that's a good argument. That's a reason I should believe. I don't think it matters unless you know why that specific person right in front of you doesn't believe. And so the biggest thing I've been really focused on is the evidence for Christ. I think Jesus Christ is probably one of the best evidences that we have for the existence of God and why we should believe. And so I've been really focused on the historical aspects as of late. Now, I'm not saying this is the only argument. There's lots of great theological argument, the contingency argument, the argument for beauty. There's really good arguments for God. But if my specific goal is to try to get somebody to question their worldview, then I want to take a standard they already have, and I want to see if I can apply their standard onto Christianity and see if it holds up. And most people's standard is I need to see evidence. Okay, so then at this point, I'm going to try to show you evidence. And I think the evidence for Jesus Christ is phenomenal. The problem is people don't understand what evidence looks like, what evidence is, and what actually is considered good historical evidence. So I really want to get them to question that. That's my current goal at the moment. I don't know if it's good. I'm playing with it. And I think I'm seeing more fruit with that than just like, yeah, here's the philosophical, here's turtles all the way down. Right. Yep. Well, yeah, I can give a really good argument for why you can't have an infinite regress, but they can just simply say, well, I think you can. And then they're good. They are good. On like the public forum, they might not look good, but they're good. They're going to move on. They're going to be fine with that idea.
Yeah. And guys, listen, like I want to give another approach here, and don't hear me giving another approach as in this is contradicting John's approach. Use which one you want to use. These are two ways that you can go, right? John just mentioned something really good, right? It's appeal to standards of evidence standards of argumentation that they already believe in, and then connect that, right, to something that would end up being a backdoor entrance into the Christian worldview, right? Another way I would do that, like if someone tells me, hey, there are no good arguments, right? Well, the first thing I want to know is, do they know what are just the generic standards for a good argument is? So I want to actually probe their understanding of arguments. Right?
Are they familiar with formal logic? Right? Like, do they?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like, what? Like, I ask them, do you know what? How? Okay, actually, this one. Do you know how many valid inference rules there are? Okay, if they can't tell me that, okay, can you name me 2 or 3 valid inference rules. Okay. So if they can't name me that, then what are we talking about when we say there are no good arguments when you can't even tell me what a valid inference rule is, which is a prerequisite to making a good argument, right? So if that's the case, and I agree with you, John, they probably just mean something like evidence. Now, a big one, this is another relative, I would say, of this argument, which is their arguments are not evidence, okay? So if you want to reveal that someone is philosophically impoverished, you say that. You say arguments are not evidence. Nobody who understands what an argument is or what evidence is would say that, okay? And the reason why this is so wrong is because if I say to them, okay, so do you believe there's evidence for the Big Bang, the Big Bang model? They would say, yes, absolutely. And I would say, okay, what is the evidence for the Big Bang model? The moment they start to cite me observations or facts, what they're implicitly doing is they're engaging in argumentation, meaning I'm going to start to explain to you what the facts that I think are evidence for the Big Bang are, but I have to give you the facts and then explain why they are relevant to something like the Big Bang model. The reason why that's important, right, is because you have people, particularly in the creationist camp, who disagree about that evidence for the Big Bang. They would say that it is not positively relevant to the Big Bang model. Okay, well then the question is, how do you show that the creationist is false? You give an argument, right? If you read a scientific paper, what's the point of the entire paper going from here's where we started, here's the methodology we use, here's how it led to the conclusion? If it's just as simple as here's the evidence, why do you need a whole paper? The paper is the argument. The paper is the argument in favor of the conclusion. So it's philosophically impoverished to say that. So again, just another framework that you can start with is test it out, right? What are the frameworks for understanding what constitute good arguments? That's a good one. Okay, moving to the next one. The next one is we don't need God for morality. This is not the most vaguest objection that you can get. We don't need God for morality. I know that people bring that up to you, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. How do we break this down? How do we bring it down to its underlying principles? What is that?
Well, what do you mean by morality? That's going to be the first thing. What do you mean by morality? Yeah. But really, like, what does that mean? Because like people are going to say, well, we all have subjective morals. Okay, sure, maybe we have subjective morals. Do you actually believe that? Let's see what your world looks like. I'm going to steal your wallet. Are you going to tell me I'm wrong? Off what standard are you going to say I'm wrong? And that's the thing. It's like, okay, I don't see consistency in moral relativism. Is it moral relativism? Yeah, moral relativism. I don't see consistency in that. And listen, this is going to be more your field than my field, but I don't see it. And I'm like, okay, you want to say that it's all based off our individual aspects, individual standards. But then you don't actually live your life that way. Even in the term that people use all the time, they're like, okay, the Bible is outdated. We've progressed. We've bettered ourselves. What does that mean? Like if it actually is not a real standard, if there isn't a God that's giving us an objective standard of what morality is, what do you mean when you say you progressed? What are you moving towards? Because even in that word progression implies that you're moving towards something, that you're moving towards a specific goal.
It's different than just mere change. Right.
Yeah. It's not just change. It's implying something better. And then you also don't have a ground to say really like anything in the past is wrong. And a lot of people are okay. They say, yeah, I believe all those things, but then they don't live it out. And I think that's actually one of the evidences. C.S. Lewis talks about this. He says people bring up this argument, but they don't actually live it out. And, you know, if you get on a bus, somebody takes your seat, you're going to say it's unjust. And he actually talks about how there's a consistency around the world with this. And that consistency is that we will all agree worldwide that it's wrong to TikTok. I don't know if we're not on TikTok. Can you say the K word on YouTube? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. But
we'll protect your video.
We'll be safe. Yeah.
Yeah. So There's no culture around the entire world that says it's good to unalive innocent people. Not one. But what they do say is they argue about what the word innocent means, and they argue about what the word people means. They change that. So there's this standard, this base value standard that seems to be consistent around the board. Now, I think the best explanation, something that has most explanatory power for that base standard of what morality is, what's all written in our heart, is this God, right? Because we'd say that morality is an abstract concept. These abstract concepts are eternal. Eternal concepts require eternal mind. I'm giving a really butchered syllogism there. So yeah, I wouldn't, and it also depends what they mean. Like, do I need the Bible to be a good person? No, you don't need the Bible to be a good person. Do I need to be a Christian? No, you don't need the Christian to be a good person. It's just this standard of morality that exists in the world. Not my best argument, not something I'm the most studied in. So I'll let Tim take it over from here.
Yeah, so this particular argument, and thank you for that. This particular argument is very interesting because, like, we don't need God for morality. So when I hear the word need, right? Again, this goes to what we said earlier. Venus flytrap, every word. Okay, I'm honing on the word need. Okay, the most mundane word. Okay, but it's okay. There's some things there. Need, necessary. Okay, necessary in what sense? What is God unnecessary for? Because I might not need the word need, and here's what I mean by that, which is,
what do you mean need?
Yeah, I need. Don't be a smart ass. But like, okay, so let's say that God isn't necessary for morality. That's very different than saying that that God is the most desirable explanation for morality. Right? Those are two very different things, because I don't need power tools to put together a fence, but they're much more preferable than just using just using my manual labor and swinging around hammers, right? So in the same way, okay, I could grant that God isn't necessary, but why does that matter? So guys, here's a principle you can use, right? Grant as much as you can without giving over to the conclusion, right? And showing
the fans razor.
Fans razor, okay? Shout out, boy. You can do that there. Okay, I can grant that I don't need this. Okay, that's cool. That still doesn't take away that God is the best explanation, hypothesis, whatever you want to say, for being moral or for morality as an enterprise itself, right? So that's one that you can do. So yeah, I think that's a good way to view it there. So like I said, guys, these are different principles and framework that you can use. Choose which one. If you like what Jon said better, use what Jon said. If you like what I say, right, use what I say, right, and even mix and match depending on the situation. Okay.
Well, I disagree a little bit. Only do what I say.
Only know what Jon says.
But no, an actual disagreement though. I agree. Pick a method that works for you, but I think what you have to do is you have to pick a method that works for the person you're talking to. You have to find out why they.
That's actually what I teach. So you want to be, what does Paul say, right? To the Greek, I am Greek, right? You got to be all things to all people. Meaning, I tell this all the time. Listen, I have my own favorite philosophical, theological views. Jon, you have yours.
Mm-hmm.
However, what is the goal? To defend a specific theology or to get someone in the kingdom? Okay, so if one person finds it hard to come into the kingdom because of a specific theology that I believe in, but there's another theology that can be rationally supported, like the one I hold, I just disagree with it, that would help them get into the kingdom, right? Maybe in that moment, that's what they need. And so I actually find myself many times actually defending other views that I don't even hold, because the other person is raising objections as though if one view fails, the whole thing falls apart. And I go, no, that's not the case at all, right? So I mean, we know, like think about free will, right? I don't know what your view of free will is, but there are different accounts of what free will is, like what free will means. And some people have this default account of free will that they have in their head. That I'm just like, that's not the only way that even philosophers understand it, right? It's consistent, right? That you hold a different view, and this doesn't even have a problem, right? So there's principle of alternative possibilities view, and there's like a sourcehood view. They both maintain free will at the end of the day. Okay. So it also comes down being well studied, right? Do you understand the lay of the land of the conversation? That's the last part I'll say on that one. What about gospel reliability? Okay. Let's say that someone says something like, the gospels are full of contradictions.
Phenomenal. So what? So freaking what? What does that mean? Okay, they can't be trusted. Okay, well, hold on. What do you think? Okay, you think Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate? Yeah. Well, you got that from a book full of contradictions. Which one is it? Like that's the problem that I have with people. It's like, which standard do you hold to? Okay, I don't trust that Jesus rose from the dead because it's a book full of contradictions. Yeah, I trust the book that says that he was crucified under Pontius Pilate, even though it's full of contradictions. And they'll say, well, there's extra biblical sources and guess what? Guess what those extra biblical sources do? Contradict. They contradict in small terms that if you were to rip them apart, you'd find out you see contradictions. Contradictions are absolutely normal in life. And here's where it's going to even go a little bit further. There are some contradictions, like absolute contradictions in scripture, that do not help the person that is the skeptic. So if I'm remembering this right, in the book of Acts and then in Galatians, there's a disagreement where Paul traveled. And so like one says that he traveled to specific cities, and I'm paraphrasing here. If people really need it, they can contact me. I can tell you what it is. But it says he travels to very specific cities, and it mentions a very specific one. And then in Acts, for example, it leaves out a specific city, but mentions the other one. So it's like, well, that's a contradiction. Okay, but here's the problem. Because both are giving historical accurate accounts that Paul traveled to these areas, and there's not even in disagreement. If they're copying from each other, they're copying this information, then you wouldn't expect to see any disagreement. But if they're writing from their own memory, you wouldn't expect to see so much agreement. So there's this problem there for the skeptic. You have this area where it's like there's a ridiculous amount of agreement, but also disagreement. And you have two hypotheses that don't work. If they're copying, they shouldn't disagree. If they're writing from memory, they shouldn't agree on these specific things. So what kind of conclusion that you can come to? Your conclusion that you can come to is that most likely they're telling a story based off their own memory, which makes it historically reliable. So contradictions don't mean jack shit. People contradict each other all the time. That doesn't mean they're lying or that they're inaccurate. News sources contradict each other left, right, and center. Yet people don't go, I never trust the news. Of course they trust the news. People are losing their minds about what's going on the war over across seas. And I'm not going to talk about it, but you didn't go across seas and witness it yourself. You're trusting what the news is telling you.
Yep.
And guess what? They're going to contradict each other in certain ways. So I don't care. I don't care if you think there's a bunch of contradictions. If you say it's historically reliable because of A, then you must remain consistent and say it's also historically reliable in B. If not, you're the walking contradiction, and I'm being the more reasonable person here. You would have to say, I'd say for somebody to use the contradiction argument, I think the only thing that you can do is apply mythicism, which most people don't want to take that stance.
Right.
That's my spiel on it.
And I think that's doing too much. It's an unjustified step. So it's an unjustified leap, actually. So I'm going to ask you this. So what is the underlying principle there? If we grant contradictions, why does that not directly result in a lack of credibility?
What did my shirt say?
Dude, I was not paying attention to that.
Chat, what did my shirt say? Shirt say? What did my shirt say? What was spelt on my shirt?
Oh no, he's doing like some psychological test right now.
Just let's see what they say. You just guess. What did you think it said?
Bro, I think it was like yellow lettering. Maybe.
Bro didn't even get the color right.
Yeah,
okay,
no
cool.
one's paying attention.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Roughly, what were we talking about? It says arrow, by the way. Roughly, everybody, what were we talking about?
See, I wasn't even paying attention. Below your face, bro.
Okay, you said it was yellow. This guy said it's black and gray. It says arrow. This person said, I don't know. You said, I don't know. Okay, we're all contradicting each other here. Every one of us, we're all talking contradiction. What were we just talking about? What were we just talking about, Tim?
We were talking about the principles. I remember.
Principles of historical reliability, right?
Yeah.
Chat, was that what we're talking about? If we all asked and all had a conversation about how this conversation went down, is every one of us going to be historical or unreliable because we got the concepts of what my
I
t-shirt
love the
said wrong?
Morian shift right now. This is great. This is
Like,
great. Yeah.
like contradictions are a
You're like, here
normal
it is.
part of
This
life
is it.
all the time. So like, if people want to be consistent, like really consistent in life and what they believe in, they're going to have to throw almost everything they believe out the window, because everything that they take in, every bit of information they take in is going to have contradictions. Now, the question is, how big are those contradictions? How huge are they? How my cat's literally tackling my door. How big are they? How much can we say like two things cannot be true at the same time? So, for example, there's a contradiction in the Gospels where what color were Jesus' robes? Was it purple? Was it red? Both can't be true. It's got to be one or the other. But you know what they all get right? They all say he was crucified, right? They all say that he resurrected. They all say that he showed up 3 days later. They all say he revealed himself to Peter and the 12. They all get these things correct. They get minor things wrong, which is exactly what you would expect to see, 110%. And if people really, really want to be consistent, start looking at all the contradictions you already believe in this world. Most people out here, bro, Bert, you need to chill, bro. Most atheists, you don't believe in evolution. Like, listen, evolutionary theist agnostic right now, right? But you don't believe in evolution, you're an idiot. Have you not ever read a science book? Ask him how many models of evolution there are. Guarantee you most of them don't know that there's different models of evolution.
They don't know that. They don't know.
Guess what? They contradict each other. Does this mean evolution is false? No, absolutely not. 100% not. Right? So challenge people's worldviews. See if they're really consistent. Too many contradictions. Okay, well, do you believe in evolution? Yeah, well, there's contradictions. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Go ahead, Tim.
Right. Yeah. Does evolution happen in a stepwise manner, right? Gradually, or does it happen ingradually, as some people say that it is, right? Yeah. I mean, you can totally do that. And the idea here, right? And again, I mean, wouldn't this kind of be evidence for like an eyewitness model of preserving events? I mean, rather than what a lot of the secular scholarship has to say, which is that these things originated in like communities later on, right? Because that's kind of what
There's
you would
no way
expect.
that's possible. There's
No,
no
yeah,
way.
I completely agree. I think it's ridiculous to say that, but I think that this is exactly what you would expect given an eyewitness model of the communication of these events, right?
Well, yeah, if
Yeah.
it's deriving later, you're going to expect to see continuity. You're going to expect to see, oh, I put this detail in. You should add it in as well. Make sure it's
Yep,
correct.
exactly.
No, but if people are trying, like, this is one of the arguments with like Christianity versus Islam. It's like, we didn't burn our mistakes, right? We're not
Yep.
Uthman, who burnt all of his, oh, there's so many mistakes, let's burn them all. We left them in there. And I
Mhm.
know Christians don't like me saying that, but like, open your Bible, go back to the bottom of the cliff notes. It's going to tell you where the
Yep.
mistakes are. It's going to say these weren't in these and these. And so that means even if your Bible now isn't mistaken, at some point there was a manuscript that was mistaken. So we left their mistakes in there, which shows genuineness. Even Bart Ehrman, in his book Misquoting Jesus, has said, I have no reason to believe that anybody ever altered the text with malintent. Everything ever done was with the best intentions, with the goal to give true information.
Yep.
And he's the biggest skeptic. The
Yep.
reason Bart Ehrman doesn't believe is not because of historical reliability.
No, it's not. It's not.
No, it's because of the problem of evil.
Oh,
That's his issue.
Yep.
I gotta let my cat in. He's losing his mind. You take it
Yeah,
away.
for sure. Yeah, guys. So you can even call that one the Bart Ehrman test, right? I mean, seriously, there are things that you can do, but one of the reasons why I want to bring up the contradictions is that's really, really great, right? So if the idea is that you can grant, like, sure, yeah, and that's actually what we would expect given an eyewitness model, right? Or Apollos, you actually said it over here. I really like it. You said based value of evidential diversity, right? Yeah. 100%.
Lydia McGrew's the GOAT, by the way. Everybody needs to read Lydia McGrew's works and read and listen to Tim McGrew's lectures.
Yes. And
Tim
McGrew is not a boring professor. He keeps you engaged, and I really appreciate that about him. Well, Jon, man, thank you for coming on, brother. This is great. We've been going for a little bit here, and I know that the audience has taken a lot from this. Guys, these are some plug and play, reliable frameworks that you can use.
When do we start the OnlyFans content? I thought that's what we were doing.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, guys, chat. What do you want to see? Who do you want to see? Jon or me? Probably you, bro. Who am I kidding, bro? I brought you on here for one reason only. Yeah. Get your gay self out of here. But yeah, guys, who do I pay to? Links, relevant links in description. But yeah, guys, awesome stuff today. People are saying both. Wasn't expecting that. Jon, is there anything that you kind of want to leave off here, or some people should know about kind of with what you're doing with your platform these days?
Yeah, just I think people. Let me rephrase this. Yeah, so my platform is being evaluated right now. I'm trying to figure that out, so I can't really talk about what the goals are because I'm not too sure yet. But I do want to really focus on. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. My biggest goal used to be let's bring as many people to Jesus as possible, and of course that's always the goal. But I think one of the things Christians often forget about is the people who leave the faith, and I think this is a problem that comes from a lot of like fundamentalist views. You can't leave the faith. You can't do it. If you did, you were never a Christian in the first place. And I think that's left a lot of people out in the wind, so to speak. And I want to help those people specifically. People who are like, man, I don't know. And maybe I should leave. Maybe I should deconstruct because I want to help give them the confidence to say, hey, I can go ahead and tear apart my faith if I want to. That's okay. I can look at every bit of scripture and I can tear it apart and I can point at all the things wrong on it. And I can look at every dogma I once had before and throw them out the window and just look at it objectively and see what happens. Because I think if you really do that with the purest intent of getting to know who Christ is, you won't be able to destroy it. I really believe that in my heart. So you can follow me on my channel, Big Jon Steel, where I debate people. But I think those debates are more for the people that are watching, not really the people I'm debating. I don't expect the people I'm debating to convert, but I get messages from people like, hey, I was struggling and you really helped me solidify my faith. And that's what's up in my opinion.
That's awesome, guys. Yeah, go support the man. Go support the man. And yeah, if you're new here or whatever the case may be, and you're not subscribed to Worldview Mastery, please go ahead and do that. We are different. Passionate about doing apologetics the right way, defending your faith by learning how to think clearly about your Christian beliefs. Okay, learning about the underlying principles that generate the answers that you want. That's the only kind of permanence and long-lasting confidence that you will ever have. Okay, go ahead and do that. And if you want my help personally, that's the first link in the description. Fill out the form, and I'll see if you are in the right position for me to lend my help. That being said, Jon, thanks for coming on. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.